I've been watching Netflix's Three Body Problem. I got so interested in the whole series. I had to like read all the spoilers to see what happens in the future. How does the story end and stuff. I'm that type of person to get really obsessed about things and kind of, I don't know, read the spoilers just to see how it ends. Got me interested. I really wanted to buy the books. I guess it's going to be like a live reaction type thing. I'm going to read like a chapter and then just share my thoughts. And there's a lot of characters. I like that they give you a list of who they are and what they do. I wonder if I can keep up with all these characters. It's easier in the show. I finished chapter 1 and then I fell asleep and now it's 5 a.m. So that stuff set back in China when China had this kind of cultural revolution where they wanted to get rid of intellectuals because they wanted to keep communism and get rid of capitalist societies. There were a lot of students who were really radicalized. The author paints a really good picture. There were some lines that I really dug, which was the blood trickled like a snake. I love that. The only thing that moved was a thin stream of blood, like a red snake. It slowly meandered across the stage, reached the edge, and dripped onto a chest below. The rhythmic sound made by the blood drops was like the steps of someone walking away. Oh, and it starts out so violent. There's this girl who's like really beautiful and she's showing something. She's doing some protesting and all the red guards or something just shoot at her. There's like I like the way they say it, like a cacophony of bullets like spray her and she just dies. And like the blood trickles, like it like seeps and trickles and makes a drop sound. It paints so well. And man, her death is so violent. It's like she falls down put her onto some spikes and then her head explodes. What the hell? And that's just like the beginning of the story. Later on, you get to the main character. Oh, well, the physicist, and he's like pretty damn headstrong. And what's crazy is all the red guards are like 14 years old and stuff, and they pretty much beat him to death. But before that, he's like, I don't know if God exists. There's no proof for it. And scientific evidence leads to that there's such thing as the Big Bang. All these kind of, and Einstein, all this kind of scientific principles. Even his wife is like radicalized too. So she's like almost leading the red guards to like beat him up. Like, how could your own wife do that to you? That is crazy. Very hypocritical because, like, you know, they don't like Einstein, but apparently Einstein kind of got his wife to become a physicist. I don't know, back then it was crazy. So this reminded me of a book called The Wave, I think, where, you know, people started joining a cult type thing. It had parallels to like Hitler and stuff, where people just radicalize. And I guess that's my also text to world. Like, it reminds me of all that Hitler stuff, World War II, the Nazis. People can be so radicalized and, you know, and do really naughty things. I guess I haven't really experienced something like this, where I've seen radicalized people, like a cult or strong feelings. Yeah. Also, text to real world is like they mention a lot of Einstein, and I think a lot of these are real events, like the Red Guards and Einstein. So a lot of text to world references. And another thing to mention is Wenji, which is the professor's daughter, was watching all of this in the crowds, and she pretty much saw the beating of her dad to death and her mum pretty much being crazy. And she had a really good professor that she liked, and I think she ends up committing seppuku. I like the way they describe it. Is like Wenji's like this radioactive Geiger counter or something. So anyone around her just kind of dies, and now she's pretty much devoid of all emotion.
Alrighty, we're on chapter 2 for... Oh no, I've destroyed my book. We just finished chapter 2 of the Three Body Problem. I think after maybe 2 years of that incident when Wenji's father died, she has now joined the construction corps, which is like a logging company where they just chop trees. And one thing that stood out to me was how it takes like a tree 300 years or something. Like these trees are 300 years old, and to cut them down only took about 10 minutes. And this kind of realization for Wenji, especially after she reads this book, I'll get into that later, makes her more aware of the environmental impacts that people are doing onto the earth. And in the story, she meets up with this dude named Bai, who's like a reporter who wants to know what this construction company, the construction corps, is doing. And he's very also environmentalist type person. And he gives her the book called Spring Cleaning or something. And she reads it and she loves the ideas in it. And it has a very profound impact on her to her core. And I think it'll influence her later. And he's writing this Bai guy. He's writing like a letter to the, I don't know, the head office people about all the stuff that they're doing is wrong. It's wrong to chop the trees, all that environmental stuff. And his handwriting is like really bad, and probably his writing as well. She ends up writing it for him with her neat handwriting. They all leave. He has to go back to his reporting place. But they eventually find out, some of the police people or something, they find out that it was Wenji that wrote the letter, and that Bai guy, he pretty much frames her. He's like, oh, I had nothing to do with this. It was all her fault. And I think he just did it out of necessary, I don't know, just to save his own butt. She pretty much gets in trouble and ends up in jail because of that. All because of that guy. It almost seems like she has like the worst luck. Anytime there's some sort of kindness or someone she can relate to, it just ends up in tragedy. And this also exemplifies in this scene where she's in prison and there's this like kind of nice sergeant girl or something, and she's trying to get her, I forgot her name, Liang or something. Let's just call her Liang. She's trying to get her to sign these documents saying that, I don't know, her family was talking about all these things that go against the communism, I don't know, something like that. And Wenji's like, nope, I don't remember any of these conversations, so I'm not going to sign it. She's very firm in her belief that she's not going to sign. I think any other person, like me, if it was me in that situation, I would totally sign it. I'm like, all right, whatever. But no, she's a strong character. She stands by what is right to her. She ends up not signing it, and this lovely lady, she's always smiling, and in her like niceness, she just walks up to the corner, grabs like a bucket of water, and just pours it all over Wenji, and pours it onto a blanket. And so Wenji's super cold because it's like they're in Mongolia at the moment, and it's like the Mongolian winter, which is apparently really freezing. Pretty much contemplating after that in her cell, where it's all super frozen. They start talking about the antenna and how the antenna is causing all these effects on people, making people lose their hair. I don't know, just did some damage to the birds or the animals, and it had this crazy effect where the antenna's like signals were making the snow turn into rain, but it was like a really cold winter. Then when the rain landed onto the trees and the ground, it would like freeze into a nice crystal structure. That's what I enjoyed reading about in the book. It made me visualize it really well.
We just finished chapter 3, Red Coast 1. I wonder why it has a 1. So from the previous night, she was super cold and pretty much gonna probably die from hypothermia. But she ends up waking up in a helicopter where two like higher up guards have taken her, and they're gonna recruit her into the antenna base or something. And they're like, you're gonna have to stay here for the rest of your life if you choose to accept to work at this antenna place, and she's like, "Yep, take me in." It just feels good for her because she's like on the top of the mountain and she can see down. It feels to her like it's like a secure home for her. So of course she's gonna take it. And one of the guards that recruits her is a graduate from Wenji's dad. Yeah, one of his students. So one of his students has graduated, and he's very into like experimental science instead of the theoretical. And he thinks Wenji's going to be a good candidate with her expertise to help in whatever they're doing at the antenna. Although, if you've already seen the Netflix show, you will know. And I already know. But yeah, that's pretty much chapter 3. We're up to chapter 4 of the 3-body problem. And this chapter is called... Well, first we're up to part 2, which is called 3-body. And then the next one's called The Frontiers of Science. This chapter was pretty confusing because they introduced so many characters. There was like so many names, and they're all in like Chinese names. It's hard to keep track of what's going on. So there's been a time skip, and about 40 years has passed, and we center on a new character called Wang Miao, who is a nanotech researcher, and he gets stopped by 2, I guess, cops or detective. One of them's called like Da Shi, and he's like this super obnoxious guy who's like smoking cigarettes and really just rude. And I think they take him to this place where they're doing a meeting. There's like people from the US, the UN, they all can speak Chinese. And I think this is called The Frontiers of Science, and they give Wang Miao a rundown of what's been happening. Essentially, a lot of smart minds, like scientists, have been, I guess, dying, committing suicide, or in some way. And there was one letter someone wrote, and it was saying along the lines like, "Physics doesn't exist. All evidence points to a single conclusion. Physics has never existed and will never exist. I know what I'm doing is irresponsible, but I have no choice." So he learns about all these people who are dying, and he also learns that a person a year ago that he met or saw, she was like this beautiful lady who was into string theory or something, and he finds out that her name's like Yang something. First he finds out that Yang Dong or Dong Yang is a female, and then that she has committed suicide, I guess. Yeah, which was with that physics thing. I don't know, this chapter is so confusing, and a lot is happening, but basically there seems to be some sort of war that they're preparing for, and they're recruiting Wang Miao to talk about it. Just overall super confusing. I'm not really quite sure. Luckily, I've seen the show, so I kind of know what's happening, but if to someone that didn't watch the show and read this for the first time, I reckon they'd be super confused of what's going on right now. Oh, they also want Wang Miao to go undercover, either to find out what the Frontiers of Science is, or he is a part of the Frontiers of Science. I'm not too sure. Alright, we're up to chapter 5, and I just finished a game of pool, and this chapter was really enjoyable to read. So from the previous chapter, Wang has taken a taxi all the way to Ding Yi's house, which is Yang Dong's boyfriend, before she committed suicide. Already on the first page of this chapter, there was a line that really caught my eye, and it's to compare someone to a star. I'll just read it. I thought it was really beautiful. "She was like a star, always so distant. Even the light she shone on me was always cold." So good. Wang's visiting Ding to figure out what happened to Yang Dong, and the talk ends up in they start playing a game of like pool table, and they repeat this. So they put the white ball close to the black ball, close to the hole, and Ding gets Wang to shoot the ball into the hoop. Cool. Do it again. And now do it again. He gets it in the hole, And now let's move the pool table. So he has to move this heavy pool table and then do the shot again. And this kind of keeps going for like a few times. It's like, what is this guy doing? I'm like, man, this guy's getting crazy. Ding gets Wang to explain why the results were always the same. Why did the black ball always end up in the pocket? And then he's talking about all these like laws of theories, blah, 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 blah. Now, the strange thing is they've set up like a particle. He's trying to compare this analogy to, well, Ding is trying to compare this analogy to like the particle accelerators that's been set up across the world. One in Europe, one in like Asia, one in somewhere. And it's basically like the pool table situation where they're making particles collide with each other and they're trying to repeat the experiment. It's like the pool table, you should end up with the same results. But what's weird is like these results are not being the same. Like each time the particles would like collide into each other, something completely different would always happen. And this happened across the 3 different particle accelerators. It's making people who are working on this, physicists that are working on this, like go crazy. And that's one of the reasons why Yang Dong couldn't live anymore. She was like, yo, this is, physics doesn't exist anymore. I'm out of here. And poor Ding Yi, he's like taking it badly. Like he's just drinking heaps of alcohol in his room. Like it smells, it reeks of alcohol. And you know, I feel bad for him because he's lost his partner, and then all this physics stuff is not making any sense. And I wonder what's going to happen next. Well, I think I already know. But what I really liked was this pool table scene is really cool because it wasn't in the Netflix show. So yeah. What I forgot to mention was Ding Yi gave the address to Yang Dong's mum's place. So I think he's going to visit her next. Also, they give more context of why the whole police business and the frontiers of science. So I think the police think that the frontiers of science are the people responsible of why these physicists offing themselves. But the frontiers of science is like a group of scientist people who are just trying to push science to the next level. Also, the police are like doing their own investigation as well of like why people are, what this mystery is all happening. All right, we just finished chapter 6 called The Shooter and the Farmer of the 3-Body Problem. This was a creepy chapter, honestly. It was almost like watching a horror movie. And it pretty much mirrors how I felt when I was watching Netflix as well. We're going to start off with Wang. He's like on a bicycle ride and he's actually like a photographer. And today was a day where he felt like taking some photos, and he took some photos. All is normal. But when he goes to develop the negatives or have a look at the negatives, he notices there's like a faint number in each of them. And this is where it starts getting creepy. Even when the numbers would always contrast with what the photo looks like. For example, if it was a black background, the numbers would end up being white. And if it was a white background, the numbers would end up being black. Now, the freaky part is when a picture was like, I think he only takes it in black and white. When he took a picture of a tree trunk where it has a mesh of white and black, the numbers ended up like being in a way so that it was visible, like, and contrasting. So it was like white, black, super creepy. And so he's like, what the hell's going on? I think he ends up getting his wife to take a photo, and then he checks that and it ends up being okay. But then all his photos that he takes ends up having the number. He gets his kid to take photos. He borrows his neighbor's camera, and when he goes to develop them in the dark room, it was only his photos that are having a number. And he realizes that the number seems to correspond to a countdown of some sort. It started off with 12,000 minutes or something. He said it was like just under 50 days. He's pretty freaked out. He goes to sleep, and even in his sleep, he sees the number. He starts seeing the countdown. And then when he wakes up, he still sees the countdown, and it's starting to creep him out. Now, I think before that happening, he ends up going to visit a friend, a person in the, I don't know if it's a friend, but it's a person in the frontiers of science. And I kind of like her personality. She's very like, she'll just say what's necessary and she won't repeat herself. Oh no, she does repeat herself. But she's very minimalistic with the way she talks. Her name's like Shen, and she's like a Japanese physicist and married to this other guy who's like a mathematician. Anyways, he calls her up, she picks it up, and he's like, I have a problem, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, yep, just come over. It was like really straightforward. When he does arrive, he noticed she's like playing this like VR game. And on her screen, he noticed like a website saying www.3body.net. And it's kind of cool how in the Netflix version, they have like a headset type thing but she's like actually wearing a VR costume. He shows the photos to her and she's like, you just need to stop your research. And she just keeps repeating that. You need to stop your research. Just try it. I can't stop my nanotech research, blah, blah, blah. She's like, just try it. Eventually, yes, he starts seeing the number everywhere. He even looks at the sun. When he looks at the sun, the number turns out all black. It really just contrasts and it's like haunting him everywhere. He goes to see a doctor and the doctor doesn't really help him. He does decide to try stop his research. He goes into his work and he ends up stopping it. And then lo and behold, the numbers have stopped. And he calls Shen again and she picks up after one ring. And she's like, do you want to see it on a bigger scale? Which I think, do you want to see the numbers on a bigger scale? And he said, all right, I'm gonna turn back on the research after 3 days. And she said like, oh, you'll see it then on a bigger scale. And also she wants him, I think, to try, she told him to like print out this website and maybe he's gonna play the game or something. I don't know, but let's compare it to Netflix. This Shen character, I feel like, I can't tell if she's a good guy or a bad guy. She obviously knows something's up. She might, it's hard to tell. But she's already in the game and she's knows about this, what's happening to it to an extent. And I don't know if she's working for them or not. I don't want to give away spoilers if you haven't seen the Netflix show. But so we're gonna try parallel in between. Lots of weird, subtle things are happening in this book. A biologist guy came and had a brief conversation with Shen, and I kind of forgot what happened, but it seemed like it was another one of those subtle, important things. Lots of different characters were introduced in this one, but yeah, it's really gripping me. I wonder how they'll show. I wonder how they're gonna show this VR game and what it's about in the book, and I wonder how they'll show the universe showing the countdown to him. Excited. All right, chapter 7, 3-body, King Wen of Zhu and the Long Night. So in this chapter, Wang Miao talks to Ding Yi. He tells Wang that he should go visit Yang Dong's mum. But before all that, he's like, yeah, I forgot to do that. But before visiting her mum, he decides to play the game that he saw Shen playing. I actually like how he describes Shen's personality, like saying that it's like talking to a computer code type thing. You know, you would ask a question to the computer and the computer like spits out the correct response, no more words or anything like that. I think he's at his workplace and he wants to try out this game called 3-body. And in his workplace, there's like a VR suit. So he puts that on and plays the game. And this whole chapter was all about the game. And it was a really exciting chapter. And I think a lot of it was very similar to the Netflix show too. He bumps into, I think, another gamer of the game. They're on their way to the main city to talk to the king. Throughout playing this game, they're like walking across and Wang Miao discovers a lot of weird properties about this place. Like sometimes the sun doesn't come, or sometimes the sun does come, and sometimes the sun's like really small, really blue, really weak. Sometimes it's like really strong. One of their followers, they have to like dehydrate and that's like a way of preserving their bodies. They pretty much spit out all this water, all this goo, and then they roll up into like a fruit roll, and then you can preserve that for later. This is where Wang Miao learns about the chaotic era and the stable eras. Lots of eras where it's unlivable to live, which is called the chaotic eras. And then there's eras where it's great to live, which is the stable eras. Anyways, they make it to the kingdom, and it's like a pyramid of some sort. And he gets to talk to the king. One of the gamers in the game develop a calendar type system of when a stable era is going to come. The game fast forwards. In the game, they're not sure when morning or nighttime happens because it's so random. So they use like a hourglass, and they would flip it, which every hourglass has like eight hours in it. So anyways, the king listens to this advisor and sees the calendar, and they're like, all right, cool. Apparently in 20 something days, they're going to have a stable era of like 3 years. And the king's happy about all this, and he's like, everybody go rehydrate. And so everyone goes, and they all get woken up. It takes like 8 days for them to rehydrate, so they throw their bodies into the water. Very similar to the Netflix scenes where they're all like naked bodies. Even when they're dehydrated, the bodies can take damage. A rat was eating one of the dehydrated bodies, and so the man woke up with like a missing hand. He was like, ooh. Yeah, so it's all lively, it's all great, all happy. The stable era is cool. And I like how long Wang Miao's like playing this game. It's like playing it over months. Although the time in the real world is way shorter to the time playing the game. But what happens is the stable era actually ends really quickly, and there's basically no sun that is coming at all. And so the planet ends up like super freezing to absolute zero, and it pretty much wipes out the civilization. But before that, the king's like, oh man, why did I trust you? And at this point, like, everyone can leave the game because it's kind of boring seeing the civilization die. Yeah. And then the game's like, oh, you can try. We hope to see you again in the future in another civilization. So yeah, this chapter was really cool. It really helps to watch the Netflix show and see what it looks like in the show, and then it really helps you visualize it when you're reading it. So that's one positive for watching Netflix before watching this. Yeah, super good chapter, and the next chapter is going to be about Wenji, which we haven't heard from in a while. We are up to chapter 8 called Yi Wenji. So she makes a return. We're actually in the present. Wang Miao, he just finished playing the video game, and now he's going to go travel to visit Yang Dong's mum. And when he goes there, he realizes this old lady is actually Yang Dong's mom. And she's been looking after like her neighbor's kids, and seems like she always wanted grandkids. And she's pretty much like a lovely lady. And we find out that this lady is actually Yi Wenji, the same Yi Wenji that was in the construction corps and had her dad die. Yeah, so he gets a pretty good impression of her. She's very kind, and she talks a little bit about Yang Dong's past, how Yang Dong was very into equations. Her art was like full of scribbles when she was a kid. What else happened? Yeah, not too much happened in this chapter. He was just like, I should visit you more. You're a lovely lady. She tells him about like 2 satellite places, and she tries to hook him up to a satellite company or something to do with the antennas. I'm not too sure. And the next chapter is called The Universe Flickers. So I wonder how that will go.
Alright, we're trying the weird mic again. Hopefully it sounds a little bit better if the distance is far away. So we just read chapter 9, and it's called The Universe Flickers. Now this one's so different to the Netflix series. In the Netflix series, like, I think they just go outside and they can visually see the sky flickering. This one's a lot different. So in the previous chapter, Yi Wenji, she told them of her student who's like working in a satellite place and with the antennas, or something to do with cosmic microwave radiation. and he goes to that person, and he learns a little bit more about Wenji and how Wenji used to work in the construction corps and all that. Basically, I think this chapter is him just trying to look at the sky's message, like from previous when he talked to Shen said like the universe will send you a message or something like that. So he's in the search of doing that. It's kind of hard to keep track of everything. So what I think they look through like the satellites or something. They look through the radiation, and the radiation is like pulsing, and it's giving out like Morse code. And it turns out the Morse code is giving out the countdown as well. And there's like 110 hours left or something. Who knows what the countdown means, like what the ending means when the countdown reaches 0. I'm not really too sure. Does Wang Miao die or whatever? So then Wang Miao Sha, the assistant, Wenji student, tells him that we have these special glasses that let you see like microwave radiation. So he goes out, he gets these glasses from someone, and he looks outside, and it's pretty much like, I like the way they describe it in the book. It's like he's in a heart, almost, like, because the sky's all red and everything, and he can see the sky pulsing, like the stars and stuff. And this is, mind you, this is around 1 a.m., 2 a.m. at nighttime. I really enjoyed that. But honestly, this revelation wasn't as cool as the one in the show. Like, the show was just like, what is happening? This one's not as good. But so this is one chapter. I think the series actually does it better than the book. And towards the end of the chapter, Wang Miao's kind of like in an existential. I can't even say that word. Existential. I don't know. I'm not even gonna bother. He's just full of despair. So he ends up in a church where they're like singing songs, and he's kind of like pretty much about to break down. He's like, what is happening to my life? And then lo and behold, the detective Dashi is there, and he's like, well, I can't believe it got to you too. So the next chapter's chapter 10, Dashi.
Chapter 10, Dashi. So Dashi meets up with Wang Miao. He's been tailing him, watching Wang Miao from a distance, and when they talk, he brings Wang Miao and takes him to go get breakfast and drink lots of alcohol. And there they talk about some these. We get a little backstory of Wang Miao. We get a little backstory of Dashi, how he's on this case and he likes to connect all these strange things. He has a theory that if there's lots of strange things happening, then somehow they're all connected. And he explains that the strange things that are happening are happening to scientists. There's some sort of attack on science, like there's attacks on buildings, attacks on scientists, and then scientists going mad and unaliving themselves. And I think Wang Miao feels a lot better after talking to Dashi. Like he kind of gives Wang Miao a strategy to keep going. He says to keep doing your research in nanotech. Don't worry about the countdown. That's all I seem to remember about this chapter. This chapter made me think about just how different Netflix was compared to the book. Like in Netflix, it was really mysterious because you started off with all these like murders and suicides, and it made you like question like what is going on, and it was so graphic. I think it really sticks out to you. Whereas the book, I feel like it doesn't have that type of impact. You only really hear about it, but it's not really described. Like in Netflix, is when they find one of the scientists like took out his eyeballs, whereas that hasn't really happened in the book yet. Oh yeah, Dashi tells Wang Miao to keep playing the video game as well, because apparently a lot of the army who's preparing for this attack is also playing this video game. So there's lots for our character to do in this after this chapter. I think it gives him a little bit of motivation, gives him a goal, you know, play the video game, continue your nano research, and yeah, see what happens. Alright, we're up to chapter 11, Three Body, Mozi and the Fiery Flames. So Wang Miao has bought his own VR suit and he's playing the game Three Body again. And he's talking with this guy named Mozi, and pretty much they're kind of going back and forth about what the theories are about the suns. I think Mozi has his own like concept of how the sun's working, and they're kind of going back and forth, and Wang Miao's kind of questioning, like he's seen a lot in the past of the patterns of the sky, and he's kind of questioning Mozi's approach, and Mozi's like, oh, just ignore that part, you know, it doesn't matter. And eventually, when all seems well, the sky ends up being like super bright, like really bright, because the sun is like so close to the earth, and it basically melts pretty much everyone, melts the world everywhere. It's like lava, I guess, is my interpretation. And that's pretty much it for him playing the game. Everyone just turns to fire. So after that, he decides to pay Yi Wenji a visit, and she wants to tell him about her time at the Red Coast base. So that'll be in the next chapter. About this chapter, I guess I just woke up, so it was kind of hard to imagine everything and kind of keep focused. But I'm hoping today I end up finishing this book. I think I'm almost halfway, so I'm going to devote a bit more time to reading after I've done all my things. So looking forward to getting to the end. Oh, and I actually wonder how much Yi Wenji will tell about the Red Coast space. Will it be new information or old information? But I'm sure as the writer, he will talk about stuff that we haven't heard in the story. We're almost halfway through the book. So this chapter, what chapter? It's chapter 12, and it's called Red Coast 2. So we're back in the flashback era where we're talking about Yi Wenji, and she's been working at the antenna place, and she's getting the hang of it. This chapter had a lot of jargon. It was like setting up for something. She's working hard. She's learning how to code, learning new code language and all this. One of the commander's name is like Lee. Commander Lee takes a liking into Yi Wenji and wants to like upgrade her and transfer her into a new unit type thing, to Chief Yang's dismay. Chief Yang was one of the guys that recruited Yi Wenji. And we kind of learned that, for now, this whole thing that they're doing at the Red Coast is to, I guess, spy on other nations' communications and use their antenna to like disrupt it. So we've been told. Anyways, Chief Yang is like, yo, stop telling Yi all these secrets and stuff. But Commander Lei is like letting her do it all. He's spilling all the beans, and I guess she takes a liking. But then all of a sudden, she kind of gets interrogated by some higher ups that have come, and you know, it's all about Commander Lei's input. This chapter's really confusing. And basically he says, they reveal that it's all been a farce. All this stuff that you just kind of learned in this chapter, it's all a farce. Now I'm going to tell you the real secret, because we did that as a test to test you, to see if you're trustworthy. I think this chapter was confusing. Like, there's a lot of jargon, and it was a lot of setup for something. I think we'll finally see the true nature of this whole antenna thing. This is chapter 13, Red Coast Part 3, I think. Let me check. Yes, Red Coast Part 3. This chapter was so dry. It was only... Basically, the premise is Yi Wenji gives Wang Miao these documents like 3 years later, or after they met or something like that. And these documents refer back to what the whole Red Coast thing kind of, their aim was. And it was all written in like scientific paper language in a way. And one paper says like the most important, to sum it up, one paper says the most important discovery is being able to communicate with extraterrestrials, because when you can communicate with them, you're likely to upgrade all your research in physics, maths, and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the Red Coast's aim, to talk with aliens. And in the chapter you see the Chinese's messages to the aliens. They're like saying stuff like, don't listen to if you've received any other messages from the other countries, don't listen to them. We are the correct ones. And perhaps like some neutral outsider can look on Earth and see who was right and wrong, that kind of thing. Yeah, look, it wasn't the most exciting chapter. I think it's just kind of, and like in the paper, a lot of things were just omitted. Like it would say omitted. Like why censoring that? I guess it adds to more of the realism, but I don't know. It wasn't fun to read that chapter. So definitely the lowest point in the book, maybe. All right, chapter 14, Red Coast Base 4, I think. Yeah, we'll just say it's Red Coast Base 4. We're now in the present with Wang Miao and Yi Wenji, and they're just kind of talking about the Red Coast facility and how eventually it kind of like died out because they couldn't keep the funds. But at the time, it was at the forefront of scientific research or something like that. Important things that happened was she eventually got married, I think, to Yang, and then had a baby, which was Yang Dong. But then Yang and her commander Lei died somehow. Yeah. So they're very suspicious things. I guess if you were a first-time reader, you wouldn't really know. And because I've already read a few of the spoilers, I kind of know what's happening, which I think is ruining the enjoyment for me. Or I've already sort of read the spoilers, and then I also watched the show. So, but to someone who is just reading this chapter for the first time, I think it can be a bit boring, this one. Yeah, like not much happened again. She did mention this cool scientific thing that I've heard, where you have your type A civilizations, type B civilizations, and type C. So type A civilizations can harness like all of the Earth's energy. And then type B civilizations can harness the energy of their sun. And then type C civilizations can harness the energy of their whole galaxy. You know what I mean? That sounds crazy to do, but maybe somewhere in the universe, someone's done that. Maybe our species will do it in like a bazillion years. Yeah, let's see what happens in the next chapter. Chapter 15, Three-Body, Copernicus, Universal Football, and Tri-Solar Day. The chapter pretty much gives away what happened in this, like the chapter name pretty much gives away what happens in this chapter. So Wang Miao logs in as Copernicus, which is the same name as the girl created in the Netflix show, and I forgot what the girl's name was. And I think Wang Miao is the same character as that Netflix girl, Copernicus, but also the same character as the nano researcher. So he's like two characters in one. Pretty sure Wang Miao's a guy. So in this chapter, he's in a new civilization. They're a bit in the Gothic era, medieval ages. And my voice is going on. And he comes up with a theory where that their planet has a three-body problem because there's three suns revolving around that planet. And the Pope, who listens to this, does not believe them at all. And he's like, burn him. Like straight away. Doesn't like the sound of things and says to burn him. And pretty much everyone doesn't believe him. And then the crazy timing is once they try to lock him up and burn him, it so happens that the day turns into a tri-solar day where there's three suns come and start burning everyone. Like a horse is on fire and the horse that comes in is quickly on fire. I wonder when they get to the part where, like in the Netflix show, where people start hovering. off into the sky. That hasn't, yeah. In this one, I think everyone just kind of burns to death. That was pretty much this chapter. Yeah, I think we're almost halfway. I think we are officially halfway now. I'm gonna quickly finish this. I've got 1 week until my YouTube video. Chapter 16, the 3-body problem. We actually are at the title of the book. The chapter is the title of the book. This one was a pretty cool chapter. This is where the pace has started to really pick up. I was kind of at the edge of my seat. So if you remember way back to Shen Yufei, who was that lady who kind of introduced Wang Miao to that VR game. So her husband, his name is Wei Cheng. He's a math prodigy and recluse. He goes to the police, Da Shi, and Da Shi meets up with Wang Miao, says you have to come, I think. And Wei Cheng, he's pretty much tells his whole backstory. So as a kid, he was always very lazy, but he had a talent for maths. But even if he had a talent for maths, he still got like pretty bad grades. And it wasn't until he had like a really good teacher that brought out his math capabilities. This all sets up for him. Eventually he gets like a PhD and all this, but I think he goes on a retreat of some sort to some Buddhist place, and this guy kind of tells him to free his mind and stuff. So what he ends up doing is his mind becomes blank, and he thinks of one ball, and then he thinks of another ball, and then he thinks of a third ball. So he's thinking of like pretty much a 3-body problem in his head, and that's how he relaxes or something. And he starts writing all these equations and stuff, and it gets the interest of this one girl, which is Shen Yufei or whatever, and she's really excited about this revelation. And she says that if you had he says I would need like a supercomputer to work out these math equations, and she's like, I'll give you whatever you need. And pretty much she sets him up for his life. He now works with like a supercomputer, and she's like became his wife and does all the cooking and all that stuff. But it's pretty much like a loveless marriage. She's just very interested in finding the solution to the 3-body problem. I'm thinking she's one of I hate to spoil it, but I might as well. If you've already seen the show and you watch it, reading the book like I have, I'm gonna just start spoiling things from what I know. So I think she's already working with the aliens, I think. And this chapter revealed a lot. I guess right now you don't really know there's aliens yet, but I think she's working with the aliens there's like, this chapter gets so crazy. So anyways, let's just do a recap of the book and I'll share my thoughts. So yeah, all this happens, but then one day wakes up and she's like staring at him with a gun, and she's like, if you don't solve this problem, we're all gonna die, or something like that. Something crazy. And then another suspicious thing is he gets a phone call from someone who says something like, you have to stop your research or you're gonna die. And it gets a bit crazy. And one day Wei Cheng hears a conversation with his wife and this new guy, or this other guy, Pan Han. Now this Pan Han guy kind of came into the book way earlier. They did have a conversation before. I remember that. He was that environmentalist guy. Anyways, I think they had a conversation about like two competing ideas. There was like one where the aliens will be the saviors, and the other one is like the aliens are gonna destroy everyone. So they're the two. They've developed like 2 different cults, and I think all of them are fighting each other, trying to stop some research, trying to help the research. It's crazy. And Wang Miao's like, I don't know, he's just listening. And Da Shi has this like assistant who is also playing the game as well, and she mentions it in real life, and that excites Wang Miao. But I also feel like she might be, I don't know, in one of those 2 groups as well, just being a little spy. Crazy things are happening in this story. And so Wei Cheng gives like all the data to Wang Miao about the three body problem and how it can not be solved, but like get close to being like a good prediction model of it. That's probably the most craziest chapter. But yeah, I think that Chen girl's dead. It didn't Shen Yufei. I think she might be dead. It said like there were some bullets up there, like 5 bullets, and it barely even affected her husband because he never really knew her. She was just this enigmatic person. I think it's subtly mentioned, like it doesn't even say that she died or anything. In my mind, I think she subtly is dead. So big conspiracy happening right now in this chapter. Very crazy. And the next chapter is going to be 17, Three-Body Newton von Neumann, the First Emperor, and Trisolar Syzygy. So this is probably the one where people get ripped up from the planet and go up in space. Yeah, big chapter. That was crazy. Chapter 17, Three-Body Newton von Neumann, the First Emperor, and Trisolar Syzygy. This was a cool chapter. If you're ever into maths and science, a lot of key mathematicians and scientists appear in this one. Like von Neumann was this super smart guy, and Isaac Newton invented calculus, and there was mentions of Leibniz. It was kind of cool to hear those names in a book. And von Neumann comes up with this idea to create a computer made of humans, which is super crazy because all you really need is ones and zeros. With the ones and zeros, they have people holding up flags, one black and one white, and when you put them together, they can make an output, which is, you can't do it in real life, but it's similar to a computer, and it has all these computing terminology like AND and XAND, all that kind of stuff that I'm not really familiar of. This author just really knows his stuff to be able to incorporate it into his story. The plan is they want to create a massive computer with like 30 million people holding flags and stuff, computing the differential equations of the suns and where their positions will be. But that's not without its error because, you know, these people need to eat and stuff. And there's still chaotic eras that happen. So they have to like take a break and then come back. But luckily it's all stored. Even with all this calculation, they still managed to make a mistake because all the 3 suns end up lining up in one. And that makes a huge like gravitational pull from their planet. And that ends up sucking up everyone and sucking up the atmosphere. So everyone's kind of just like all gone and the sky's all pitch black. That's pretty much the end of that civilization. And then at the end of the game, one person comes up to Wang. So Wang's just, it's funny how Wang in all these games, just an observer. He like almost does nothing. And even though he does nothing, he ends up passing the level. Some guy in the game asks for his like address and stuff and invites him out to a meeting, and that will happen in the next chapter. Yeah, pretty cool chapter, that one. It was very faithful to the Netflix, or Netflix was very faithful to the book. Like pretty much not much changed from the Netflix show to the book. Yeah. Alright, we're up to chapter 18 called Meetup. And this is where Wang Miao meets up with a couple of people who are playing the game, the three-body game. And the leader of this thing is Pan Han, which is that environmentalist dude who could be a suspect of killing someone, Shen. So he pretty much talks about the race, the Trisolarians is the first we've heard of him. And they're the alien race that lives with the 3 suns, and like they don't look like humans, and they can transmit information at like almost like the speed of light. So they can actually do like the computer thing with the flags thing, and they can do computations and stuff, and they can also dehydrate and preserve their things and remain intact, like all their memories and stuff. the meeting has like 6 other people, and Panhand kind of talks about what the whole game's all about and who this race is. And wouldn't it be an awesome thing that they arrive on Earth and people are like, yeah, awesome. I am sick of humans or whatever. And like 2 people were like against the idea, and so they got kicked out of the group. And Wang's like sort of undercover. He sent a text to the detective, and he was like, I think he's just playing along. He's also like, yeah, let's go. Yeah, pretty exciting chapter, that one. I really liked it. Not sure if it happened in the Netflix. Did it? Oh yeah, there was a Netflix one where they did have a meeting, but the leader was Yi Wenji. Maybe that'll happen later, but this meeting is with the environmentalist guy. And in the Netflix, there was like quite a lot of people, but this one's only about 6 people who's been playing the game. Actually, in the Netflix version, there was like the girl and that other guy, but then the rich guy. But then the rich guy didn't want to be a part of it. So then they sent someone to off him. So maybe that's the equivalent of the two, the Netflix and the book. Yeah, interesting differences, but yeah, it's gripping me. Definitely want to keep reading. Chapter 19 called 3-Body, Einstein, the Pendulum, Monument, and the Great Rip. So I kind of forgot what happened because I kept falling asleep reading this chapter. So he's playing the game after when the planet had that syzygy and had the 3 suns pulling the people off the planet. Now, when he logs back into the game, it's like pretty advanced. It's almost like the technology has reached our age. They're in the information age, and we're talking to this guy like Einstein. He's like playing a violin or something, and Wang Miao sees like a moon that he didn't realize it was there before. And turns out this moon actually came from when the planet had the syzygy. It actually pulled apart like half of their planet, and so that planet ended up turning into killing everyone and then turning into like a moon. Pretty crazy. And in this age, they figure out that it's actually the aliens that figure out, or the Trisolarians, they figure out that the 3-body problem has no solution. So in the Netflix show, it was Copernicus that said there was no solution to the 3-body problem. But this one, they already figured it out. So they're on their next step is traveling in the stars looking for a place to live in this video game. And their galaxy used to have like 12 other planets, but because of having the 3 suns around, every time the 3 suns would like expand their gaseous range or something, and then every time that would happen, they would like eat up a planet. So, and it just so happens that the Trisolarians, their planet was like the last one to get eaten up. Pretty crazy chapter, this one. I really liked it. And I think the next chapter is now, it's like the final time that they log in. So I wonder what's going to happen here. Yeah, a bit of difference from the Netflix show. It's the perfect reading weather. Okay, that was a really fast chapter. It was called 3-Body Expedition. So he basically Wang Miao logs in one last time to the game, and they're already 3 generations in the future from the last time he was there. I think like pretty much the planet's almost all gone by now, and when he looks up into the sky, he sees like a square of suns, but really the 4th corner of the square is actually a fleet, a spaceship thing that they've made, some sort of interstellar spaceship that can fly at 1/10 the light speed. There's some funny coincidences in the talk. They're like, we found a planet 4 light years away. And then Wang Miao's like, we also know of a planet that's about 4 light years away from Earth. So I think obviously they're talking about the same planet. So Trisolarians are probably talking about Earth being the planet that they're going to. I think Wang Miao's like, can't even connect the dots yet. That's pretty much that chapter. Oh, and then the game sends out another invitation for him to go to, I don't know, Pan Han again. That's the end of part 2 of the book. Now we're on to part 3. I will miss the game. The game was probably the most exciting part of the book, and even in the Netflix show, I thought the game was really interesting. Actually, this is where knowing all these spoilers ruined some things. So I understand why Wang Miao couldn't connect the dots of that, Trisolarians are probably visiting Earth. Because in his mind, it's all a video game. So why, it's a coincidence in his head, but to him, he probably can't fathom that this is probably happening in real life. To a reader that has not been spoiled through the Netflix or the book, at this point, they're probably thinking the same thing, It's like, it's all just, where's this game leading to, We are now on to part 3, Sunset for Humanity, and chapter 21, Rebels of Earth. So, Wang Miao has made it to this new address and the meeting, and already he hears a conversation with Pan Han, and also this meeting has way more members. Some are celebrities, all that kind of stuff. And someone already confronts Pan Han about killing, what's her name, Shen Yufei. And then while that's all happening, the commander of this place they call themselves the ETO. I'm not sure what it stands for, but I think it's the Earth Trisolaris organization. The commander is, lo and behold, Yi Wenji, that same character that's been in the beginning of the book and everything. And she talks to Pan Han about his behavior, because he pretty much broke a code of conduct of their organization. Shooting Shen Yufei wasn't really part of the plan. Apparently his plan was he wanted to get rid of the mathematician, her husband, because he seemed to find a solution of solving the 3-body problem. And if he gave that solution to the aliens, then the aliens wouldn't need any excuse to come to Earth. So he was like, I'm gonna kill him. And but while Pan Han was on his way to do that, he instead bumped into Pan Han's wife, and she was in self-defense, had a gun. And then I guess a big shootout happened, and that's how she died. And the mathematician guy is still alive. So if it's really true, if he did have a solution to this impossible equation, and it's funny, Wang Miao was about to share this solution too, but then they quickly cut him off and said it was impossible or something. So we don't really get to see further detail about how good this solution was, if it would have changed things. So very interesting. Yeah, so Yi Wenji, that's probably the big plot twist of the story, that Yi Wenji's the big commander of this thing, and she's going to explain in the next chapter more of this origin of how she started this organization. Also, a cool thing was they had this little monument thing, this little model where it was the 3-body problem happening because of levitating magnets type thing. That was kind of cool. Yeah, I'm interested to read the next chapter. This chapter is called Red Coast 5. We're on to chapter 22. And this chapter was pretty, I guess, hard to understand because it's very scientific. And even as a person who studied science and science communication and has a general interest in scientific concepts, I think this one kind of went over my head. But essentially, Yi Wenji has found out that the sun is a good way of spreading, amplifying radio sources, essentially. And she's trying to do this behind Commander Wei and Chief Yang's back, I guess. She's kind of doing her own sort of research, and while I guess one of the people wants to try to take credit of her work. I think she's trying to send out a message to using the sun. That's pretty much the gist of this chapter. Very hard to understand. Oh, and just like in the Netflix show, pointing anything at the sun is pretty much forbidden because what's his name? Mr. Yao, Dictator Yao. He was known as the sun, and even like scientific papers had to be censored. Like they couldn't say sunspot because the black in the sun means like some sort of counter attack type thing, counter towards his political ideas. Okay, we're up to chapter 23, Red Coast 6. So in this chapter, probably like 8 years had passed or something like that. That message she sent out like years ago, it was either 4 years ago or 8 years ago. It finally reached some place, which is the Trisolarians or Solarians. They respond back. They tell her, "I'm a pacifist of this world. Do not respond. Do not respond. Otherwise, we will come conquer you." Because the second time you send a message, we'll be able to track that where your location is. And what's cool is where the Trisolarians are. They're like 4 light years away in the Alpha Centauri like system. And apparently, in real life, there's almost like a 3-body system there. This sci-fi stuff's like pretty close to real life. In this chapter, you find out that Yi Wenji, she starts gaining her hate again of humanity before even receiving this message. And she's just getting like flashbacks from the Cultural Revolution and stuff like that. Chief Yang like actually loves her and asks her to marry her, which they do. They get married, but it's like she doesn't really have love. In the book, it says like her heart is made out of ashes and there's no way to ignite her heart to love anything. And it was actually a sort of a bad decision for Yang to marry her because she's part of the counter revolution type thing. And so a lot of his status has been deteriorated because of marrying her. So once she gets all that, she decides to send a message back to the aliens. And this bit's kind of unbelievable. I guess like even after 8 years or whatever, 8 years or 4 years, maybe you would have moved on. Maybe, but maybe not. I don't know. I guess you would. I can kind of empathize with her. Anyway, she sends a message back. She's saying like, "Come to Earth and conquer us. We can't fix our problems anymore. Come conquer us." And she sneakily does this while, there's still people working around. She goes unnoticed. Even a guy sort of spots her. She almost gets caught. He's like at the end of his shift and he's like, "I want to go home." And then she rushes back home. She's like all excited and stuff. And then she faints. And when they take her to the doctor says, "You're pregnant." And that's the end of the chapter. Exciting chapter for sure. Actually moving on. It's kind of weird that like, I guess we're 3/4 away from the book. And I think this is like the main part of where the action or the real part of the story happens. For fresh readers, fresh people who are new to this, I don't know if they could like last this long until it gets to the main core of the story. Shout out to the pacifists who actually try to save humanity from all this happening. Yeah, but sadly, Yi Wenji went against his warnings. Chapter 24, Rebellion. This was a cool chapter. Very exciting. So, Yi Wenji tells Wang Miao that he has to stop his nano research technology because that will set humanity into being able to build a space elevator, which is like an elevator that leads you all the way to space, and then you can start building more weapons on like the moon and stuff, or out in space to protect you from, I don't know, alien attacks. So that's why he had to stop his nano research technology. All of a sudden, Dashi's army comes in and crashes the party, putting everyone under arrest, basically. But not without a fight. the crazy girl who killed Pan Han. I don't know if I mentioned that, but before Pan Han, his neck got twisted around and died. This crazy girl with no name. She's if you remember before, I talked about the cool monument thing with the 3 balls floating around. Well, she grabbed one of those balls, and apparently it was like a nuclear bomb in there. So she's like, "Everyone get back, or I'll throw this." It's a pretty funny scene. Like, the other 2 balls, they were like fake. They weren't any bombs or anything. And they had the bomb experts like looking at them and laughing. But then when she showed this ball, and somehow they did a test, their faces were like frozen. Like, oh, she's got a bomb. But Dashi, he has this plan. He like says like, in this envelope, I have the whereabouts of who your mother is, and like that gives her enough time to like freeze, and then someone probably shoots the ball that she has in her hand, and that sets off like not a concentrated explosion, because that was the plan. Like, they were whispering, if we shoot at the ball, it will explode, but it won't be so concentrated. So we could survive that. So that crazy girl, she doesn't survive. Everyone else gets, radiation damage. Wenji and a lot of the rebellion, the ETO people, get put in jail, arrested. And at the end of and Wang Miao got out okay too. At the end of the chapter, they're like talking on phones, and they're like, "I can't believe you were right. It was all aliens," and stuff like that. That's what Dashi said to Wang Miao. Next chapter is going to be a spicy one. Also, I thought that chapter was pretty exciting, like very action oriented. Lots of like, felt like I was in an action movie. I could definitely envision it in my head. Oh, and one last thing was Dashi with that envelope thing. It was all fake. he just had a hunch that a crazy girl like that would not really have a mother in her life. We're up to chapter 25, the deaths of Lei Zicheng and Yang Weining. And this chapter is like 2 pages long. So, as you remember, Yi Wenji has been caught by the police, and now she's being interrogated. So she talks about her past, about how she murdered these 2 people. So the reason why she murdered Lei Wei Chang, her commander or whatever, was because he had this like backup system the whole time. So he could see that aliens sent a message to the Red Coast base, and then he confronts her about that happening, and he's like, let's just keep it on the down low, because I think what he wants to do is take the recognition of being the first person to talk to extraterrestrials. So Yi Wenji already comes up with a plan to get rid of him. She heads to like some electrical thing and undoes a screw, and like, I don't know, some technical thing where you have to climb down something, like a belay thing, to get to some area and to fix that. I don't know, it's kind of complicated. So the commander has to climb down, and while he's climbing down, she like cuts the rope a little bit, and coincidentally her husband comes, and he's like, "Oh, looks like commander needs some help. I'll climb down too." And so he climbs down, and then when they're climbing back up, that's when the rope breaks for both of them at the same time, and they all die. Yeah, pretty weird setup to get those 2 people. I don't know if it's believable, or if I read it correctly, because I can't really picture what the hell just happened. Chapter 26 was No One Repents, and this follows Yi Wenji. She's not suspected of murder at all. She pretty much gets away free. They all think it was a freak accident. Soon, the Red Coast security facility lightens up a lot, and a lot of people from a nearby village end up visiting up there, and they're keen on learning from Yi Wenji because there's like open exams, entrance exams to get into like good schools, and anyone can really do it if they have good grades. And so these kids all kind of learn from Yi Wenji about physics and all that kind of stuff, because she has a great mind. Like, I felt this part she might have built up some regret, maybe, of contacting the aliens. Like, all these good things start happening to her. For example, one night she's she's kind of feeling alone, and there's like a party happening in the village. And then she gets a knock on her door, and it's actually just like two boys who have brought her some food, some like, I don't know, cabbage and stuff. And yeah, these lots of acts of kindness from the village. And when Yi Wenji's having her baby, she can't have it at the hospital. They have to move her to a different hospital because I guess she's just really weak and stuff like that. And so she pretty much falls into like a sleep while they're getting the baby out of her, and she dreams of like 3 suns and how it like scorches her, and then the 3 suns go away. Maybe some symbolism here happening. Anyway, she's back in her village, and the people in the village want to help her raise the baby. Like, Yi Wenji lost a lot of blood during that pregnancy. She can't really give milk to the baby, breast milk. So one of the villagers who has like big boobs feeds the baby. And like the men, even the men like respect her, whereas normally the men would cheat and beat their wives, but with Yi Wenji they just give her a big respect. So lots of good things seem to happen in this village. Eventually all the cultural revolution lightens up, and they're trying to, I guess, fix things about all that thing. So she kind of gets like a lump sum, and saying that she can come teach at the university, and you know, even they pay what they would have to her dad. She decides to visit her mum, who's now married to a new guy, Shao, I don't know. And at first it was all nice and amicable, but the husband says something like, "Don't talk about your dad ever. Don't bring the past. We're trying to move on from that." And Yi Wenji's like, "No, that's not okay." And then the husband's like, "Well, the mum told me to tell you that," or something like that. And then from that point on, she never visits her mum again, or that guy. Now she just has more hatred again. And she kind of forgets about everything, and she's glad she sent the message to the aliens. So I don't know, it's really hard to kind of change Yi Wenji. I think even with all this kindness that people helped her raising her baby and stuff, she's still so angry, and she really wants this aliens to come and conquer them. She manages to set up a meeting with all the Red Guards that, you know, murdered her dad. Somehow, that's just kind of crazy. They're all now working in, you know, really cheap jobs. Probably end up nowhere in their life. They're still wearing the same clothes as well from back in the day. And these 3 girls have been through it all, pretty much through all the Cultural Revolution stages. And Yi Wenji, I don't know what she's looking for, some sort of signs of regret and that kind of stuff. But these 3 girls don't really show any remorse. They're just like, we had to do it. I don't know, that kind of stuff. And I think that's why at the end of the chapter, she's like, "I've had it. I hate everything." All right, we're on to chapter 27 called Evans. And in this chapter, I think Yi Wenji has to help build a new antenna thing somewhere. And in this location that they find that doesn't have lots of electromagnetic waves, there's this guy who's kind of like from the west. He can speak English, and he's been planting trees for like 3 years. He wants to try save a bird species. And this guy is called Mike Evans, and he's like a very strong environmentalist. He had this story of his like dad where, I don't know, his dad's business got oil all over all the birds, and Evans was too busy trying to like scrub the oil off the birds, and a lot of the birds died. So he really cares about nature. And what's funny was, when his dad dies, his dad gives his brother and sister $5 million, but gives Mike Evans $4.5 billion. Billion or million? Yeah, billion. And he's like not sure what to do with the money, because whatever he does, humanity is just gonna destroy everything pretty much. So Yi Wenji, she tells him about all the aliens and stuff, and he's like, "Oh, maybe I can spend my money devoted to that cause, helping the aliens come to here, destroy pretty much human nature. Yeah, well, that's pretty much that chapter. Chapter 28, the second Red Coast base. So it's been about like 3 years after Yi Wenji met up with Mike Evans, and I think he invites her out or somehow, and they go by helicopter, and Yi Wenji reflects on every time she's in a helicopter, her life just seems to change. And again, it does change. So he's, with all this money, he's built like this ship that has like antennas, and he calls it like Judgment Day. And on it, he's got the whole organization going, like the Earth Tri-Solaris organization, they call it, or the ETO. And he with his antennas, he used Yi Wenji's like coordinates, and he managed to talk with the aliens and pretty much confirm everything that Yi Wenji did. And now they're on their way to Earth, but it's going to take about 450 years. And it'll be interesting to see how the novel actually tackles this. Because I know in the Netflix series, like they were starting to do hibernation type stuff, but this one hasn't gone through that yet. And one last thing is Yi Wenji is now appointed the commander of the ETO. We are up to chapter 29, called the Earth Tri-Solaris Movement, the ETO basically. And what's happened is the ETO has formed pretty much 2 subcategories, and one's like off with the leader, was it Mike Evans, and off with the other leader, Yi Wenji. And ETO has been like expanding quite rapidly, gaining more members. And you have one subgroup called the Adventists, who are really keen on just ending all of human life, because and they just want the aliens to come and end human life. While you have the other ones who are like the Redemptionists or something. Let me check. Yeah, I was right. They are called the Redemptionists. They see the aliens as a way to help, I guess, the civilization. And they also want to help the aliens by figuring out how to solve the 3-body problem. And they're the ones that invented the video game to recruit more people to help them solve the 3-body problem. Yeah. And what's interesting about this chapter is it kind of gives you a glance of there being a third group, which is called the Survivors. So basically, it does a short time skip of like 400 years. Apparently, there's a group called the Survivors who have survived the alien invasion. So that's pretty crazy that they mentioned that in the book. We're up to chapter 30, 2 protons. And look how close we are to finishing. We're almost there. Today will be the day. So in this chapter, they're interrogating Yi Wenji, and she tells how the alien spaceship is going to come. They have massive fleets, I think, massive ships, and it's cool how they travel. Like they travel by collecting matter or antimatter, and somehow the matter and antimatter collide and gives lots of energy, and then they can travel at 1/10 of light speed. But they have to keep like doing that. Like they collect some, use the fuel, and then they're coasting their way to Earth. And that's why it'll take like 400, 500 years. But they did manage to send like some protons, 2 protons to Earth. And people who are listening, like Wang Miao and Ding Yi, they're just like, 2 protons, that's nothing. But Ding Yi's like, well, he starts talking about high dimensions. And it's kind of complicated here, but I think this is where watching the Netflix show makes it more understandable. Like the way they showed it on the Netflix made it a lot more better than what it is in the book. In the book, they're like using some secret analogy. I don't know, it kind of went over my head. Yi Wenji starts referring the aliens, how they see humans as bugs. And even Wang Miao and Ding Yi start repeating that they're just merely bugs of the world to these aliens. And the theory is like the 2 protons that they sent have been blocking all of science progress. And Mike Evans is quoted as saying as soon as those 2 protons came, and it only took maybe like 2 years to come, like way more faster. For them, for the 2 protons to come, all of science has pretty much died afterwards. So it's like the beginning of the downfall for humans. And it's crazy in the book that they managed to send 2 protons from such a far distance to somehow get to Earth. Like, how do you have that accuracy? And even the characters kind of talk about that, but they don't really explain it yet. So, also, clarification, survivors. So, you know how I was talking about the 3 groups? You had the Adventists, Redemptionists. Survivors, I think they're planning on, in the ETO, they plan that the aliens will come and pretty much destroy all of Earth or something. So I guess they're coming up with like a backup plan to survive and live off that. I don't know. Also, we learn in this chapter that the aliens have sort of ceased communication, and like a lot of the communication logs are on the Judgment Day battleship. So let's see how they tackle that gory scene in episode 5 of Netflix. Probably the best episode, by the way. So it looks like they're gonna go and do an attack on the Judgment Day ship. This chapter's called Operation Guzheng, and it's basically everyone coming together to come up with a plan to attack the ship Judgment Day. And after countless ideas, like, should we bomb the ship and all that, Da Shi's the one that comes up with the idea of using nanotech, the blades, the flying blades of the nanotech thing, use that to cut people up, cut the ship up, because they know where the ship's going. They'll be sailing towards the Panama Canal, and the idea is like, even if the nanofibers cut through the computers, it's actually like such a fine cut that not much will be lost. You can repair it and stuff like that. Again, watching the Netflix, the way they did this was really good, and I prefer the Netflix over the book in that regard. Yeah, it was just so iconic, that scene. And I guess it was kind of hard to imagine in this book. Like in this book, there was like just one guy watering things, and then his hose like stops working, and then his hands just get chopped off. Yeah, and then during all this, they find Mike Evans' body, and he was like pointing to the computer or something like that. And the interrogator who's talking to Yi Wenji is telling her all about this. And when they look through the encoded message, it's like 28 gigs. It's like really big. I don't know if they said gigs, because gigs is not that big, and she's confused. She's like, normally these messages are very efficient in size. So my guess is it's another VR game. So we're gonna see about that. But basically, Yi Wenji's kind of hopes of like having the aliens, I don't know, her optimistic view that the aliens will come help the humans, it looks like it might not happen, because they probably have ulterior motives. So let's find out in the next chapter. Oh, I'm excited, because I'm not sure what's gonna happen, but I feel like the Netflix adaptation has been really good with the book so far. So I get the feeling it's gonna be that scene where, you know, they show their real plan, and maybe the proton folding stuff, and how they've been watching us. I don't know, we'll see. Now, chapter 32, Trisolaris, the Listener. This was a really cool chapter. I loved this one, and it wasn't in the Netflix at all. So on Trisolaris, we got to see what their species is like, and what their world is kind of like in this chapter. Basically, they have these listening posts all over their planet, and in these listening posts, they're pretty much safe. They're safe from chaotic eras, and there's one listener apparently there's only just one listener working this job, and his job is just to listen out for extraterrestrials, and he's become so good at it. Like, he knows what the sound of the universe is, so when he spots something, he can instantly tell that it's a message from somewhere. And when they receive the message, they can quickly use their decoder to figure out what the message says. He really enjoys listening to this message. Like he loves the sound of Earth, you know, and the way that they describe Earth, like, you know, one planet, one sun, like a stable area, you got your waves, trees, and all this kind of stuff. And he really likes it. And this guy is like a good guy in my books. And he has dreams about Earth and like a dream that the Translators people end up attacking Earth, and I think he doesn't want that to happen. So in his mind, he thinks that he should send a message. Well, originally he's like, they figure out that they can't find where the direction is. They don't know where the direction of the sound is, or they do, but they don't know where the distance is. But if they can get the people to respond again, then they can figure out the distance and their location. So with that in mind, it seems like he was going to trick them into sending a message, but he's actually a good guy. So he also, apparently these guys live for like 700,000 Trisolarian hours. I guess they don't really have years. I don't know. Also, the way people die in this world is like they dehydrate them and then they just throw them into the fire. Something like that is how they die. And how they reproduce is they like somehow merge with another one, and like 1/3 of them and 1/3 of them gives power to 1/3 of the baby or something. And the baby has like memories, some of the memories of their parents. Pretty crazy. Anyways, this guy is like the listener, he's like a low life. Like he's one of the losers of the world. Like low status job. He's like, I'll never get married and all that kind of stuff. So that's why I think he decides to send a message like to Earth saying, do not respond, do not respond. Now, the question is whether if the alien should have even sent it in the first place. Because if he just ignored it and didn't say anything, maybe that would have done a better job than saying, do not respond, do not respond. So, I don't know. That's, I guess, one plot hole. I don't know if it gets answered. Yeah, so the alien sends that, and pretty much he gets caught, he gets caught by this guy called the Princeps. What a weird name. I don't really know what it means, but I think he's pretty much, he lectures him. He's like, what you did was so wrong. You deserve to die, but I'm gonna let you live so you can see Earth suffering. And he like fires everyone else who was doing like, literally fires, you know, everyone else that was doing their job of listening at the listening post, like gets 6,000 of them to dehydrate and burn them. Pretty crazy. And they talk of like starting their ships, and like their planet pretty much doesn't have any hope left because one of their suns is about to reach this phase where it starts engulfing their planet. Yeah. That was a really cool chapter. It wasn't in Netflix at all, like I said. Yeah, so good. Let's just keep reading, see what happens. All right, we're almost at the end now. We're on chapter 33. It's called Trisolaris Sophon. And 85,000 Trisolaran hours is about 8.6 Earth years later. And I did some algebra, and a rough estimate is that these guys, Trisolarans, they live up to maybe around 75 years of Earth years. So this chapter was probably so complicated. Really, really dense and complicated. But I will try to explain what I know and remember. So they come up with a plan after monitoring Earth they're not monitoring Earth. After reading about Earth and hearing how they go through so much ages and how their technology has been accelerating, they come up with a plan of attack. To do that, they're going to decide to stop Earth's progress in science. That's the only way. Because by the time the Trisolarans enter like Earth's thing, which is 450 years, Earth will probably have their own fleets and will be able to attack. In this strategy, they want to use these sophons to, I guess, mess with Earth's technology, perform like miracles, so then people start believing more in some sort of faith in like religion and stuff, and less about science. So ways to hinder them. And these sophons are like protons that have been like unfolded into different dimensions. Pretty crazy. I think at first, the way I think of it is they unfolded a proton to like 1 dimension or 0 dimensions or something, and then they implanted that proton with like they turned it into a computer. And then now this whole process took like forever, so many years to build a sophon. And then what I think is they turned the proton back up to higher dimensions, so 6, 7, 8, 9 dimensions. But it's only when they built 4 sophons that they could put it up to 11 dimensions. And with 4 sophons, they could interact with each other, and you could see, it's like a mirror. Like you could use these sophons to see mirrors of stuff. Like they could see the back of their planet, one of the suns. Yeah, super confusing. Anyways, their plan was that they're going to send these sophons, and these sophons will hide in all their particle accelerators, because for some weird reason, I guess technology relies on just particle accelerators, which is a strange thought to me. To like, is that true? Like, is it that powerful, these particle accelerators of advancing science? Like, we know about the Higgs boson now, like, but has that really led to anything? I don't know. The thing with science is you never know. So, and I guess they have a point with these particle accelerators, but it's the only thing they can really mess with. So these sophons, they hide in the accelerators, and they're so big enough that they will get hit by other particles in these accelerators. And then when they get hit, they're going to send off a different result each time. And then that sort of drives the physicists insane, like physics don't exist anymore, that kind of stuff. And then you have some sophons that are dealing with people's, like, dealing with their film and like photos and stuff, and they can add numbers to things and stuff. And then this can also add into people's eyes as well, so that kind of stuff. So that's why all these strange things have been happening across the Earth. And there's also one big sophon that's just kind of enveloped over Earth, I think. And that was the one that could perform the miracle of the flashing lights. After this, I think they have ceased communication of Earth. They did send one final message, was "You're bugs," and that flashed in the eyes of all the people in the room, of all the like commanders and stuff of Earth who are trying to come up with a plan. That flashed in their eyes, and you know, this feeling of being watched the whole time will never like ever fade away, really. It's only until like many years that people get used to it. But yeah, such crazy power. Basically, the aliens, it's kind of crazy that they managed to build something like this. That's probably the most unbelievable thing, but I guess their technology is so strong. Yeah. And with Trisolarans, their progress of science is like a steady rate, whereas humans is very accelerated. So that's why they have stuff to fear. I guess in the real world, this whole AI stuff is like, it just feels like it came out of nowhere, and now it's just taking over everything. So yeah, who knows where life will be in even just say like 50 years, how technology it's just expanding at a crazy rate. Yeah, but like I said, most confusing chapter ever. You kind of just have to get the gist of it. And I think it's also hard for me to visualize, but maybe other people who are more intelligent than I am can visualize what's happening. I might have to read a different summary just to see if anyone can explain this chapter better than I can. But I do get the gist of it. Yeah. Alright, chapter 34 is bugs. Basically, everyone, Dashi, Wang, and Ding, pretty much just drink their lives away. Not really, but like, I mean, what can you do after you hear that kind of news where, you know, they're just watching you and they think of you as bugs. Like, they think you are such bugs that they can just pretty much reveal their whole plan to you and it won't even matter. So Dashi takes these guys out onto the country where it's like infested with locusts, and he shows them that, like, even though humans have tried to, I guess, burn locusts, come up with ways to like make babies that, I don't know, affect their reproduction and come up with chemicals and all this stuff, none of that has even helped, because like the locusts still keep coming back and eating all their crops and stuff. And this analogy kind of strengthens the duo, that everyone's morale, like Wang and Ding. And he makes a good point that, like, well, Dashi is such an incredible character in this book. Like, he just seems so really important. He makes an incredible point that, like, the technology between locusts and humans are like pretty far off. But like, maybe the technology between Trisolarans and humans aren't that far off. And even if it is, like, maybe humans will just keep coming back like the locusts did. And that's the end of it. It was a really short chapter, bugs. So let's talk about the next chapter. It was called chapter 35, The Ruins. So in the ruins, you have Yi Wenji pretty much coming back to the site where all her work happened. And she's kind of a bit devastated hearing the true news of what the Trisolarans are going to do. It's actually kind of crazy that Mike Evans' group managed to pick up all this information of their plans and everything. Like, how does that come across through their messages? Very weird. Yeah, so she's just basically, I guess, coming back, reflecting. In the Netflix show, she wanted to die here, but I think this one just sounds like she might still live on through in the other books. Yeah, and she just looks at the sunset and she's like, the sunset for humanity, that kind of thing. Very poetic. And that's pretty much the end of the book. Yeah, it was pretty good. Pretty good book, I gotta say. And then I read the author's postscript. So the author has like a special thing with, when he was young, he saw like a satellite go off, and it was like he was 7 years old when it was 1970. So he was born in 1963. And he was really amazed at one of the satellites that China put off. And just hearing the scale of how far things are really cemented in his brain. And it became one of his like special talents, being able to envision how long a light year is. Like 1 light year is like 7 times around the Earth. And I guess, and he has like this special talent where, yeah, he can like envision how long 1 light year could be. And I think it helps with his writing. Like, he can envision what 4 light years away is like, and so on like that. And he can also envision like the other types of scales. Like, his strength is being able to do different types of scales. And he makes the argument that sci-fi is probably like the biggest impact you could do in terms of writing or something like I don't know what he exactly said. I'm just trying to interpret what he said. Like, you know, you have your myths and ethos and poems and all that kind of stuff, but in the end, like, I think sci-fi is like talking about like the real life things that could actually happen. And through that's where you can like tell the love stories and all that kind of stuff. Even just like stuff like climate change and all that kind of stuff, war on Earth, it's not going to matter in the grand scheme of things. Like, one day an alien might just pop up in front of, like, next to our moon. And like, what do humans do as a species? Humans are so destructive wherever they go. Like, they invade other pieces of land, get rid of them through war and disease. But then when it comes to like you know, the stars and space we just seem so hopeful, like, you know, maybe they'll come and help us, that kind of stuff. But really, if they're anything like us, they're probably the same, like they want to take over worlds and stuff. So yeah, I always thought it was like a silly thing that all the bad guys ever always wanted to take over worlds, but you know, it just seems like an innate human quality. And probably if there's aliens out there like that, they will feel the same, you know. It's scary to think of another alien watching us, and you know, how do you fight against the aliens? Like, we want to stay alive, they want to stay alive. That's just already two conflicting things, and it would take a lot of, I don't know, stuff to live together peacefully. And that's just, maybe it's by nature, it just seems really hard to do. Yeah, so that was that. And then the other chapter was the Translators Postscript. These aren't really chapters, but the translator just says it was a really tough time. You know, translating, you kind of have to do, not really word for word, but you have to try and get the essence of what the author says, and then you have to try not to add too much or omit too much, that kind of stuff. And seems like a really tough job to do, honestly. This is the Dark Forest, the prologue. We start off with an ant, just traversing the earth, and I guess trying to find food and making routes. So it's going around, going like 1, 2, I don't know, 7 and stuff. And the ant feels like a vibration in the earth, and it turns out and in my mind I'm like, is it a human or is it a Trisolaran? But the ant recognizes it's someone that it's seen for a while, or like a species. And yeah, it's like don't worry, it's a human. And what else happens? Yeah, and that human I think is Yi Wenji. She's old now, she's got white hair. And someone comes to talk to her, and I think it's a new character. His name's like Luo G or something. Luo something. Yeah, Luo G, but like spelled different from Wenji, so it's not related. But he knew Yang Dong, and I guess they're just kind of chatting, and he's wondering like what to study, and she's like, you should study cosmic sociology because no one else is really doing it. And I guess it's a hint that, yeah, they'll have to learn that kind of stuff when the aliens come. Meanwhile, this ant is still kind of, I don't know, making its own path. Not really sure what the ant was, but I guess it kind of, if you're thinking about like the bugs thing, like it started off with the bug not really knowing anything. It's just kind of living its life without a thing. And I think the Trisolarans, I guess they're watching the humans, and the humans are just living their life without, you know, knowing there's like a big observer or something. And in the end, I think it said there was like a pupil in the sky or something, so maybe everyone knows this, I don't know. Or is the pupils the stars? It was kind of confusing, that part. But yeah, the writing seemed really similar, so I'm kind of keen to pick up the last book. And yeah, with that, that's the end of this book. I will share my thoughts somehow.